Hi there, this is Sean, the Honest Book Reviewer, with another book review. In this video, we're discussing Digging Up Dirt, written by Pamela Hart. It's the first book in the Poppy McGowan series. It's a cosy mystery series set in Sydney, Australia. Everything about this book I love. The characters, the mystery, the setting. Every character bursts off the page and they're written so well. The mystery is very complex in a way. In some ways it's simple, but in some ways it adds a lot of complexity to the story. And the characters just make the story so real and so lifelike. Every character in this book is just well-rounded, well-crafted. The main character's points of view, her descriptions about things, her observations are just amazing in my opinion. And one of the characters in this story, Poppy's mother, is an amazing character. Her reactions to Poppy, the things she says sometimes, just make this story just really fun read. And as a cozy mystery, it ticks all the boxes and it just is an amazing book. I'm hoping that there's more books to come in this series, and I'm hoping that the next books are just as good as this one. We're given a really good description about Poppy in her life. So she works for TV. She works on TV making educational programs for children. She's also bought a new house in a suburb in Sydney. Well, not a new house. It's an old house that needs a lot of work, but it's one she could afford. And in this story, at the start of the story, there's a builder who's making renovations and repairs to the house. While he's doing that, he's ripping up floorboards. And underneath the floorboards, in the ground, he sees some bones. He calls Poppy. Poppy goes and has a look. She can't believe that there's bones there. She's just thinking to herself, what's this going to mean for my renovations? So instead of calling the police, she reaches out to a friend who works at a museum, and she sees if they can get someone to come and look at the bones just to see if they're human or animal. But the person that the museum sends is somebody that Poppy doesn't like, and the feeling's mutual. Poppy used to work for the museum at one point and didn't get along with this lady then. But now, not her arch enemy, just somebody she doesn't really like, comes to inspect the bones. And this just sets up quite a few different scenes in the story, and just a bit of tension in the story as well between these two characters, and that's really important. Dr. Julianne Weaver is the character that's sent out to look at the bones. And straight away she's wondering if they could be bones of a breed of sheep that came over very early on in Australia's history, but weren't very common, and they died out a bit or weren't used a lot as farming went on in Australia. So it'd be rare if they found bones from this type of sheep. Because of that, she sets about putting in heritage protection order against the property to stop any more renovations or construction going on. Poppy can't believe it. It just means that her house may not be repaired for months. So that's extra layer of tension and resentment between these two characters. Also, Julianne brings along another archaeologist called Tor. He's described as tall, good-looking, muscular. Poppy just sees love hearts when she looks at him, even though at the time Poppy's going out with another guy called Stuart. Tor is also Julianne's boyfriend, and they don't seem to be getting on very well. Poppy hears them arguing a little bit, at different points in the story, and that's important as well because that sets up other tension and other relationships in the story that can play an important part as the story progresses. The third big thing we do learn is that Julianne's also trying to get pre-selection for a small political party, and this party is called Family First. And basically Family First is a political party that tries to associate their platform with religion, and they're quite conservative in their viewpoints. And one of the big things about them that's described in this book is they think that the women in society should be subservient to men, and they should be mothers and housewives and not really want for anything else. That's the party that Julianne's trying to get involved with, which is a bit of a shock for some people because Julianne doesn't seem to be that type of person. Now, because it's a cozy mystery, we have to have a crime, and the crime is a murder. Julianne is found dead at Poppy's house, Poppy's property, and her body's found in the pit that's been dug to expose the bones, to get the bones out from the animals. Poppy is, of course, a suspect early on because it's her property, and the police learn that Julianne and Poppy didn't get on, and also that Julianne could be stopping that renovation happening to Poppy's property. There are other suspects in the book as well. So we have Tor, of course, being the boyfriend of Julianne at the time. We have other people that Julianne went out with in the past. We've got an ex-boyfriend who still works at the museum that Julianne worked at. We've got Julianne's boss, and Julianne and her boss didn't get on, and there was great tension there. Julianne looked like she was trying to get evidence to try to get her boss fired from the museum at one point. They've got a lot of things going on in this book, a lot of suspects. And the great thing about this mystery is all the suspects seem so lifelike and so real, and they all seem to have a really great motive for murder. Even Poppy. Even though we assume that Poppy didn't do the deed, she's the main character, she has to investigate, and she has to be there for book 2 in the series. She's got a great motive for murder, and the police do hone in on her for a bit in the story. They do think that she's guilty, and it's very interesting, those interactions between Poppy and the police. And as the story goes on, there's one police officer that Poppy almost becomes friends with. Their relationship changes a little bit as the story goes on, and I think that's important because it probably means that if there's further books in this series, that character, that police officer, will be the contact for Poppy in the Force. I won't describe anything else about the plot of the book. I don't want to give away any twists or turns. I don't want to give away any clues about the mystery, but I will say the mystery and the characters are written so well, it's perfect. The writing in this book is just really spot on. It's written in a light-hearted way. There's some quite serious subject matter in the book as well, but it's written in a really refreshing way, in my opinion. One of the things I really did enjoy in this book is the author doesn't include all the tropes that other cozy mysteries do have. One, for example, is that the main character, Poppy, doesn't throw herself into areas where she's in danger. When she feels like there's danger, she'll contact the authorities, get the police involved. That's different to a lot of cozy mystery series. And I think that's really refreshing, and that's one of the reasons why I love this book, because it tends to turn some of those tropes upside down. Poppy is a really great character, very strongly written, very strongly presented to the reader. I get a true sense of her, a true picture of her, and I just love her observations. She's got a lot of wit, a lot of charm. I love how she interacts with other characters in the book. I liked her humour in the story as well. I liked the fact that her character grows in this book very quickly, and she does react strongly to certain things, maybe over the top in certain ways in my opinion, but it makes sense for who the character is. She's not hysterical as a character, but she has a few little ups and downs as the story goes on. But I do get the sense that this character just has a solid foundation, and I wonder if the author took a lot of time to formulate this character, to really craft the character. It just comes across that it's written so well thought out in this book. Julianne, who's the murder victim, I like this character because she's very complex, and we find out a lot about her after her death, and this adds to her complexity, makes her seem a bit more mysterious. She's not sinister in any way, but she's just got all these different layers to her, and a lot of it comes out after she dies. And I found that just fleshed the character out so much, and it makes you feel a bit more compassionate towards the character. Because at the start of the book, she's very combative, very aggressive, and you don't get a good opinion of her. But as the story goes on, that changes a little bit, and you feel a bit more empathy for this character and a bit of compassion. and you kind of realise where the character was coming from in her life. And I think that's a really special way to present the victim, because oftentimes in mystery books and in cozy mysteries, once the victim's dead, you don't really get more depth to that character, and it doesn't change the viewpoint from the reader's point of view. But in this book, it does work differently, and I think the author really thought about this character a lot and how to present it to the reader, and it just shows as the story goes on. Poppy's mother is just a breath of fresh air. I loved everything about this character. I loved her one-liners. I loved her interactions with Poppy. I just loved the fact that she's so down to earth as well. She feels like a real salt-of-the-earth person and really grounds other characters around her. She's got a lot of life in her as well, a lot of vibrancy, and she just really bursts from the pages. And I'm hoping that in future books in this series, Poppy's mother plays a central role, because I think a lot of Poppy's reactions with her family centers around her mother. I'm hoping that just stays the same as the story goes on, as the series goes on. I can't say much more about this book. I loved everything about it. The mystery, the characters. It seemed well plotted, so well thought out, and even giving us more about the victim after the victim dies. I thought that was really well done as well, and not giving us all those familiar tropes that other series have. The author looks like the author thought about some of those things and decided what to include and what not to include, and made really clever choices, and that really added to the story as well. I rate this a 5 out of 5. I recommend this book very much. Go out and grab a copy, get it from your library, get it from Amazon, wherever you get your books from. Get a copy and give it a go. Even if you don't like cozy mysteries, I think you'll enjoy this book, because it has elements of general mystery in there as well. So it's not just a true cozy mystery. Even though it's in the genre of cozy mystery, it just feels a little bit different from other cozies. So give this one a go. I think you'll really like the story. On my channel, I do review a lot of cozy mystery books. If you don't want to miss out on those videos, check out my channel and subscribe. I also have a cozy mystery playlist on my channel. It should be on your screen now.